Hi, and welcome to this month's edition of Healthy Living Resources. I'm Amy Meehan, the Healthy People Program Specialist with OSU Extension, and we'll be continuing our discussion about Prosper, so stay tuned. Welcome to this month's edition of Healthy Living Resources. I'm Amy Meehan, the Healthy People Program Specialist with OSU Extension, Family and Consumer Sciences. And today we'll be talking more about Prosper, and I am joined by Tammy Jones and Karima Samadi. So welcome, you guys. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you on the show. Before we get started with continuing our discussion about Prosper itself, could you guys take a moment and give us some background on who you are and what you do? Go ahead, Karima.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a Prosper Prevention Coordinator. And just to recap on last week, Prosper, because like everything we do, is an acronym. Mm-hmm. It stands for Promoting School Community University Partnerships to Enhance Resilience, which doesn't really tell you a lot, but it is essentially a substance abuse prevention program, or delivery system, I should say, where we work with families, schools, and communities. And we'll kind of go into what that looks like more in detail. But my role is to provide support to folks like Tammy, who are extension educators, what we call in the Prosper delivery model team leaders, providing them assistance, whether it's helping recruit families in their communities or get the word out about Prosper, securing funding, getting sustainability in for something like this. So I'm just an assistant really to all the magic that Tammy will do.
And I'm Tammy Jones. I am a family and consumer science educator in Pike County in the southern part of the state. And Pike County happens to be part of the Prosper grant. So Kristen Campbell, who's the 4-H educator in our office, and myself have been trained to be team leaders and facilitators for our upcoming program in Pike County. Mm-hmm. So as part of that, the lead part became my job, and working on recruiting and doing the promoting within the county.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both again for being here. I appreciate having you guys on to continue this discussion. Before we continue, could you guys just kind of recap what exactly the programming is? Why did Ohio choose to take this specific programming on? And just a little extra background to catch our viewers up with what was discussed last time.
Sure, yeah. So Prosper's actually been around for 20 years. It started out at Iowa State, and the idea is to utilize a land-grant institution. So in our situation, or in our state, it's the Ohio State University. We also engage with Central State University, which we'll talk about a little bit later, to be the backbone organization in delivering a family, school, and community-based programming. So the reason we engage is, as you know, substance opioid abuse has been so rampant in our state, has affected so many communities, so many lives, and you see a lot of recovery, treatment and recovery programs out there. I'm sure you all have heard of Narcan and Naloxone. We've heard a lot about recovery centers, but there's not a lot going into prevention.
Sure.
And so Prosper is one of the few evidence-based programs which Extension really is a champion in delivering. So evidence-based program means it's been proven to have positive outcomes. So Prosper in particular, with its design, has shown to reduce substance abuse initiation and usage rates in youth. And so, as you might imagine, that has lasting effects on their success as an individual, if that means graduating high school or going to college, sustaining a job, having a family, and also communities really rallying around substance abuse in their communities. So it's a multi-pronged approach. Like we say, I know sometimes we mix up and call it a program, but really it's a delivery system that has programs in it.
Gotcha.
Some of them we'll talk about more in detail later.
Absolutely, thank you. So last time we discussed kind of Prosper as a whole and what the programming looked like across the state, but what specifically does the role that Extension plays in Prosper? Like, what does that look like in Pike County in particular?
In Pike County, it is the collaboration between the school district, the community, and our local extension office in Pike County, which brings in the 2 educators that we have in the county in order to provide the curriculum and the training, working with the school districts and the community. And through that, we build a community team. So part of my role is to reach out to community members, school professionals, families, to bring in people to meet. We meet once a month as a team, and we look at, most recently, the risks for teens and youths in our community specifically. So every community is going to be able to do that and adjust to what the needs are there. And I think a big piece of it in our conversation so far has been just about the awareness. Karima touched on the idea behind it. Every community deals with it differently and has different resources, but this prevention piece is something new, and it is something that the school district, the court system that I've met with, have both told me that there is a need for in our county. So I am so excited to be a part of this and to be able to provide it, because it is a need and it's a want, and that's half the battle, is getting people to want the program that you're offering, and they are seeing that this is a perfect fit for the needs here in Pike County.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm really glad you mentioned awareness raising, because I think that can be a very large barrier in public health, especially when it comes to health behavior change. So what have you guys kind of been doing to raise that awareness to make sure that this program will be successful?
Well, I know that, like Tammy mentioned, she's been starting to have these meetings. In some communities, you might already have existing drug task forces or coalitions where you're talking about what's going on in the community. Maybe the health department has issued an alert saying that there's a high dose of rate of overdoses going on. So really just talking about the issue, not only about substance abuse itself, but mental health. So we know that there's a stigma around that, right?
Absolutely.
And so bringing that conversation to the forefront and inviting those key players to the room to work collaboratively. As Tammy mentioned, the courts and the health departments, they don't always talk to each other, but you're doing the same type of work. You're trying to get at the same goals. So when you form a team or a coalition, you're really working in concert with each other toward the same goals. So you're not duplicating efforts, and you're also helping to uplift each other's efforts in this battle.
Definitely, that's great, and it's really cool to hear that we're starting such an impactful programming from what it sounds like, both this past episode and what we've been discussing now. In the past episode, we talked about kind of Prosper as a whole across the state, and that it can look different in every county. So Tammy, could you speak more to specifically what you've been doing here in Pike and how it's kind of shaping up here in this county in particular?
So as my starting point, I reached out to the local school district to see if they would partner in interest, and they right away came on board and have been more than supportive in helping me make contacts. But then I use other resources that I have through other partnerships and collaborations that I do year-round in the county to bring those people that might be interested or have a desire or to help with this type of programming. So that was kind of the start, building that team and having those conversations. But the next hurdle part was locating facilitators who are able to work. So it's not just Kristen, our 4-H educator, and myself doing the facilitating. We had to seek out other community school individuals to be willing to attend the training and then in turn facilitate during the 7-week session. We successfully were able to do that, found 2 individuals who are parents within the school district and are very active in those roles, so that they bring in the connection to the community and to the school, but they also have a passion for helping this age and this community. So that part that I thought was going to be a struggle ended up being very, very successful. So they've attended the training, Kristen and I have attended the training, and we are in the process of recruiting right now at this time.
Awesome. What can participants expect from the programming?
I think from participating in the program myself as part of the training, I feel like the individuals gain so much information and useful day-to-day things that any family can use, no matter where you're at, no matter what your situation is. I find that the connections being made, not just parents and children, but parents found out that they're not alone. They're not the only ones facing these issues. And I think the teens found that out too. So in the segments, what is really really neat is the first hour of the program, all of the adults are together doing activities. All of the youth are in a separate location doing activities. And then everyone is brought back together for the second hour for a team family building practice, games, activities. And I think what individuals find in that is, again, like I said, they're not alone, they're facing it, they have time to talk among their own peer groups, but when they're brought back together, they're kind of a family team participating with others. And I think it's a feeling that a lot of families don't typically have a lot of experience with, and I think they find that it's very positive and uplifting, and then it motivates them throughout the week to follow up and practice what they've used, and then bring it back the following week to share with the other individuals.
That's really great to hear, and I'm sure communication within families can be difficult sometimes and stressful, especially depending on the age group. And we talked about, the mental health stigma and just wanting to talk about things in general. Have y'all seen so far with what you've done with the programming, has there been an impact specifically on how families interact with each other and change that conversation about peer pressure if they want to try, if kids want to try drugs or substances of any kind initially? Has that helped? What kind of impacts, I guess, have you seen from other states, or even what little bit has been started here?
Yeah, so since we're in the very early stages of programming here in Ohio, we've only had one county actually start the Strengthening Families 10 to 14 program, and that's in Hardin County. But we've seen a lot of excitement, a lot of communication going on with adult parents and caregivers and the youth that wouldn't normally happen around issues like, for example, the very first session for what we call SFP 10 to 14 for short is about the parents and caregivers learn about love and limits. So what's it like to show your youth love, but at the same time set limits and have consequences for unfavorable actions or activities. And if they're working in coordination with another parent or caregiver, what does that look like to work collaboratively? And then the youth work on what we call a treasure map. So they create on a poster board a depiction of their goals and aspirations and what steps it might take to get there. So really getting youth to think critically about what it's some things that they want to see for their future. So when we went through training, I'll admit I was skeptical. I don't know how this is going to go over. This seems a little hokey to me. But actually seeing it in action and seeing how excited families got about it and how engaged they were was really inspiring. And then seeing not only the same families come back but the next week, but actually more.
Wow.
So that's another beauty of the program is not only is it building strength within your family, it's building healthy relationships, which we know is really important in extension, just within your own community and for schools. So, again, talking about the issue. So we're excited to see what else happens. We've heard a lot of success stories in other states. Like I said, this has been around for 20 years. There's been about 10 states that have participated. None have really dove in like Ohio has. Usually when states begin to do Prosper, they'll start out with a couple communities. Well, we started out with 10.
Wow,
so
that's awesome.
We actually have 9 counties participating, and I know we listed them in the last episode, but I'll just rattle through them again in case one of them is yours.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, but it's Hardin, Paulding, Vinton, Greene, Pike, Brown, Monroe, Washington, and Perry. So, and Franklin we didn't mention. So although Prosper was originally created to cater toward a rural community because Extension tends to be a real backbone for social capital in rural communities, we're testing it out in an urban environment. So we're in Franklin County or Columbus to see what that looks like because we feel like it could work as well. Urban communities tend to have a lot more resources, a lot more organizations doing similar work. So there's not always the coordination you'll see in smaller communities because in rural communities such as where we are now in Pike is you may not have a lot of organizations, so you really depend on each other and you work really well together. So that's what makes community teams really shine, but we're excited to see what that's going to look like in a big city like Columbus. So
absolutely, and I think it's so cool that, like you said, Ohio really grabbed this programming by the horns and wanted to start in 10 counties all at once. And I think a large part of that has to do with extension, correct? That Extension is a really active player in the whole state of Ohio.
Absolutely.
And so could you both maybe speak to a little bit more about how Extension has been able to be so helpful with this programming and the development of it, and hopefully that's why it will be successful here?
I'll speak for our county. Extension is the perfect fit because we are seen as a resource into so many areas within the county and the community, so it's kind of a natural fit.
Sure.
And with a lot of the collaborations and partnerships that we already have in our, I would call our day-to-day program that's already existing, we already have connections with a lot of the same people. And as Karima mentioned, in rural communities you often are limited on resources, and we truly do have to rely on each other. And it all kind of comes back at some point. You're reaching out asking for support and help and promoting your program or providing resources, and there are lots of resources needed in order to run this program, which I think we said it earlier was 7 weeks, but in those 7 weeks there's lots of things that are needed, so relying on those other partnerships and collaborations in the county. And then obviously there will be a time when those same organizations or partnerships are needing Extension as a resource, and I will be happy to assist them when that time comes.
Yeah, and it really takes awesome educators like Tammy to do this, because she's such a valuable and trusted person in the community who does a lot of excellent programming, and so it takes someone who's really been in the community, understands it, to engage in something like Prosper. And we talked a lot about the family-based program, Amy, but I just wanted to mention some of the other components.
Please,
so
yes.
yeah, how it kind of looks like is we'll have in the springtime SFP 10 to 14, like we talk, the family-based program, and then in the fall we'll engage 7th graders that are typically hopefully had received SFP in the spring, who will go through life skills, and pretty soon we'll have this all on a website. It's in the works, but you'll get to see an outline of what that timeline looks like. And then a couple other components we didn't mention that also makes this a perfect fit for Extension is we've already been engaging in adult and youth mental health first aid in a lot of our counties, and Generation RX. So those are 2 programs. Mental health first aid is actually an international curriculum that helps to reduce the stigma around mental health issues. So talking about what is depression, what is anxiety, what does it look like, and what could you do as an individual, either within your own household or in your community, to be an advocate for people and getting them connected to resources. And then also Generation RX, which is bringing awareness about substances, so not just having it being a hush-hush thing that's in your medicine cabinet, but what happens if you experiment with drugs, and what is addiction, what does that look like. So again, having that conversation early is really a key component in preventing substance abuse and
Absolutely.
opioid abuse. So
one of the things I thought of, that the website is not up and running, but of the counties that you mentioned, I believe you said 9 counties participating, you can identify and locate by typing in the website the name of your county.osu.edu, and that will give you contact information to the office in your county that is participating, and ask, who do I contact, who do I talk to, and who do I find out more. Up until that information is provided, that's definitely a direct link to your county and finding out how to get involved. So there's lots, like I said, lots of partnerships, lots of support needed. So getting involved you may not be a 6th grade parent or know of a 6th grade family in one of those counties, but you might have other ways of supporting, whether it be financial support, there's support needed, there's food that's involved in this program, then there's also child care that's provided for families to participate, so that they have younger children that maybe they wouldn't be able to attend if they didn't have that child care support. So through our program we're able to provide that. So those types of resources, and just as kind of one little plug for our county, we are using some 4-H clubs who are actually, that provides them, they're going to do the child care for us, which in turn provides them with community service, so it's a win-win. It helps us, it helps them, and kind of gets that need taken care of. So anyone in any of the counties that Karima mentioned that can be a resource to your Extension office, please reach out to them, because it takes a lot of people and resources, and we don't always have, every county is not organized the same, so we always can use those resources to kind of spread the help around. program.
Absolutely. And if you are a viewer in one of the counties that we mentioned, reaching out to the Extension office we think is definitely the best way to get involved. I know we're still in the early stages here getting up and running in Ohio, but have there been identified specific schools or locations where these programming might be taking place so that our viewers who are interested in being involved in some way or another or taking part in the classes, there a way for them to figure that out so that they can jump on board if they want to?
Yeah, like Tammy said, the best way is to just contact your local Extension office. One of the things that we've been working really hard on is, delivering the message about Prosper to schools. As you know, education is so complex, and our educators in the school system are so almost overburdened with how much they have to do during the day. So it takes a little bit of convincing to get them to sign on to Prosper. But once they see the successes, see how much families like them, how much is reduced problem behaviors in school, they're really all about it. So we do have some schools that are confirmed, but again, the best way to find out if your school is participating is to contact your local Extension office and talk to an educator who will be able to indicate. I know, for example, in Hardin County, where we have a program up and running, Kenton Middle School is participating, so they've been really on board. They're been really supportive in providing both space and helping with recruitment of those families, like we mentioned, which is really key.
Wonderful. And bringing it back to Pike County, why this community in particular? Why is it so important? What is the impact you're hoping to have here?
In our county, there are 4 school systems, so it was basically to connect with a school district that would support this, and I started with one, and I got yes on the first one. But my hope is in future years, once we successfully have this going in the one school district, that it will be able to be implemented in other districts, hoping eventually all 4. Obviously, it's going to take some time and some growth with that, but and again, more resources. So you're kind of reaching out to some of the same resources, but you're wanting to offer it in all of the school districts. So right now, I'm working with Eastern Middle School, and they're 6th grade. So the program is designed for 6th grade families, and then working through the summer and into the next school year, they will be 7th graders.
Awesome.
And we all know that that's such a tough age in school and out of school, and it's not just for the kids but for the families. So I really feel like this is a need that all of the participants will gain a lot of information. Just a couple things I wanted to touch on. This, and I think in your previous episode that you guys may have even touched on this a little bit, you talked about the fact that this program is for any family. It's not for identified families. There's no requirements. You don't have to have a need. You don't have to have a deficiency in anything. You don't have to be a single parent home, but you could be. You may not even have the parents in this child's life. It might be a caregiver. It might be a family member. This program is reaching out and is available to anyone. Obviously, our space is limited, so that's kind of an incentive for people to register as soon as they hear about the program. Kind of my recruiting tool was I actually went to the school and met with all of the 6th grade students to promote this and kind of recruit that way. And we followed that up with information sent home to parents. And then we have a neat opportunity coming up where parent-teacher conferences are going to be held in the school. And I will actually be setting up during the conference time in the evening. As parents come in, I will be the waiting room for the parents waiting to speak to the 6th grade teachers, and that will give me an opportunity to answer questions, see if they got the information sent home. If they didn't, obviously I can provide them with that.
Definitely.
And I'll actually be able to register them that evening. So fingers crossed. I would love to fill up our class that evening, but if not, we will continue recruiting up until that time. So looking forward to seeing how that type of recruiting and promotion goes.
Sure, that's wonderful. That's great to hear that there's already so much in place. So when participants come to the program, I know we touched a little bit on it last episode, but what specifically can they expect out of it in terms of content? I know the main focus is substance abuse, but what else and what specific aspects around that?
I think the big umbrella that I would kind of hold the whole program under is positive behaviors which lead to positive choices.
Wonderful.
And kind of how those two things work together. Every family, no matter where you're at and at what stage you're at and the type of relationship you have, is going to face challenges.
Sure.
Whether it's at home or at school or in the community. And I think the curriculum that we will be using during during these 7 weeks will provide these families with the tools needed to make better choices. And then the success, as Karima mentioned, of the 20 years of evidence with this program is the decreased numbers in a lot of substance abuse and use and choices. And the kind of the big payback to the community and kind of my sell and reaching out to the community is the benefits to the community. Obviously, it creates could create lifelong community members, but then giving back in their ways. Obviously, it talks about the price tag that is associated with what the community can get back, and that comes from having reliable employees in the community. It cuts down on incarceration and all the costs that go with that. So there are so many factors that immediately may not be seen, but we're talking about 6th graders, so they still have some time and lots of choices to make in that time, and hopefully this program will give them good options when they're moving into the high school years and then on into adulthood.
Yeah, and Tammy, I think thank you for bringing that up. You talked about the price tag. Just to piggyback off that, when you look into Prosper, it's actually for every dollar invested in Prosper, you get $9.60 back return on the community, and that's exactly what Tammy said in the return of workforce productivity, reduced incarceration rates, less hospitalization or treatment for people who may be experiencing addiction. I mean, we've all almost been touched by what this opioid crisis looks like in the state of Ohio, and so even if you're not in a family that's engaging in the Strengthening Families program 1014, there's absolutely an opportunity to engage in the community teams. Like Tammy said, they're really key in helping sustain this program, so you don't have to, although they're typically comprised of your court systems and perhaps the health department, a school, you can just be a regular civilian who's passionate about this work and wants to build a more resilient community and get engaged and prosper. So we really encourage you to contact your local extension office, find out about what's going on. It took us a while to get into this mess, if you will. It's going to take us a while to get out, and we all have to work together.
Definitely, and I think we're really excited to see how this is all going to unfold here in Ohio. So speaking of contacting your local extension office, Tammy, do you have any other programming that, related or otherwise, you'd like to talk about while we're on the show?
I do lots of programming in the schools. I'm currently teaching Real Money Real World in several school districts within the county, which is a financial education program that has been very requested through the years. But I also offer programs in the county around health and nutrition. I have one coming up, a monthly series at the library, and this month we're doing mixes, so homemade mixes, pantry type items and cleaning solutions that can be made from everyday items.
Very cool.
So that's one. And then I'm also in the middle of a 6-week nutrition class for adults, which is called Cooking Matters. So that's offered around the state, and you may check in your local extension because it is offered in many counties throughout the state, and it's called Cooking Matters, and you can get signed up for those programs, and it's a worthwhile experience, and it's a great tool to use for adults when it comes to healthy eating and cooking.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you both so much for being here, Karima and Tammy. We really enjoyed having you on the show and talking to us more about this really awesome programming that we're really looking forward to seeing more across the state. So definitely, viewers, if you're interested, please reach out to your local extension office. We will have the website listed here shortly for you to be able to get in touch better with the programming in particular, or any one of us. Our contact information will be listed as well. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks.